what factors do you believe influence a culture into developing or selecting value principles that lead to, valuing harmony, respecting life, and non-ego principles like those adapted in the Scrawnians?
Yeah, that is such a great question, and I think that there are some underlying values, like the scrawny ox type story we had there. I think there's a certain core set of human values that literally evolved with humans over the last couple of million years with pre-human hominids, and the last couple of 100,000 years as humans themselves evolved. And that came from the setting of being in bands of 30 to 50, maybe up to a max of 100 or so people, and learning to live together in bands. And in fact, as we go into the book, cognitive anthropologists have shown that what actually makes us uniquely human is the qualities and the values that came from learning to live together in these kind of sophisticated communities of thought. So I think that's kind of one underlying thing. But then what caused China to go in one direction and, say, Europe to go in another? And I don't have answers, but a lot of theorists who have looked at this, and I think their approach makes sense, look at the underlying geographic terrain and the kind of core livelihood that people that the people use, and into what sort of formed unique kind of underlying sets of value systems. So one great example is the difference between wheat and rice farmers. Because it turns out that if you're a wheat farmer, you can basically get a lot of stuff done on your own, with your own family. And you have your fields, and it's a strong sort of family dynamic, but you can look after yourself. But if you're a rice farmer, there's really no way an individual person can successfully farm rice. There's a need to work together with a much wider community and kind of share what you do. So theories have developed that one of the reasons for the Chinese sense of kind of integrative thinking and harmony being a core value is their need to really work together as communities for their core crop. And in fact, some social scientists have just recently, the last few years, studied, and even within China, there's about 1/3 of the provinces are actually primarily wheat-based, and another section are primarily rice-based. And they have these sophisticated questionnaires to figure out who is more individualistic and who's more community-oriented. Turns out the rice farmers there in China are more community-oriented than even the wheat farmers in China. So I think things like that made a real big difference. And we see also, for example, in ancient Greece, there you had a lot of little mini states develop, and there was a lot of emphasis on fishing and small crop holding. So there was a much more of a sense of much smaller communities developing rather than being part of a big empire like China. And that led to this kind of fragmentation where different city-states started to think about questions. Well, what makes one city-state more successful than another? And that's where notions like democracy or all kinds of ideas that we now take for granted came from.